Hello and welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast. Glad you're joining us today. How you doing, Rachel?
I'm doing good. It's been a while since we did a podcast together. We've been busy.
Yeah, lots of life stuff going on. It's always going on, but this time it seemed like it kind of came all at once for sure. It's been a crazy couple weeks. So, how's the things going with well, you're two homesteads, I should say. You're probably undoing the one and fixing up the other one.
Yeah, just yesterday I moved a ton of asparagus and strawberries, and the whole back of my car was full.
I seen the picture.
Yeah, so I had a ton of that to do, and then I had to hand water. We're still in a drought, except for we've been getting rain all day.
Yeah, it's raining here too. Yeah.
So perfect timing. I just planted all that. But my back this morning was pretty rough. So that I've been doing that, and we're basically well past peak here. I don't know about you, but most of our leaves are on the ground.
Oh yeah.
We're kind of in that fall cleanup, making leaf mold time of year, and I'm still trying to move plants. So that's what I'm doing. And then of course my power saga at the house continues.
Still no power at the new place. Oh.
Yeah. So by the time this podcast gets out to everybody, our house will be finished, but we have no power. So we still can't move there.
Horrible.
So I guess.
And we'll go ahead and say, because you and I have talked about it, people keep giving you advice. Well, just go solar. But that's a really hefty investment that you're not ready to make right now.
It is a hefty investment that we're not ready to make right now. And it's just not, kind of speaking of the topic today. We financially cannot do that right now. So
yeah, it is very expensive.
It's very expensive. So, yep. So that's not going to happen. So we just have to wait and, trust that God has a plan and he's not telling.
It'll play out in time.
Like so often in my life, he has a plan and he's not telling.
Yeah. So, that electric company will want your money. So sooner or later they'll get it.
Someday they'll want to take my money.
Yeah. For sure. Yep.
So that, and it's been weird. I don't know about you, but we have had the wildest weather this fall. We've had multiple, probably about 4 hard freezes. And then Monday, it was 80 degrees.
We've had a couple light frosts. We haven't had any hard freezes yet. We've had a couple light frosts, and the drought. I mean, we'll get rain, for a couple days, and then it doesn't rain again for weeks, and then it's raining today, but it hasn't rained for a while, So it's just kind of back and forth. So I started early, kind of pulling things because I didn't want to water stuff anymore. So I started cleaning out beds, and I still got some things out there. I still got some beets. I was just picking some beets the other day. I still obviously have some carrots in the ground. I got to get some of those pulled out yet. Of course, I've got chard and kale and onions. There's still things out there, but I have taken up all the, we're done with peppers. We're done with tomatoes. We're done with most of the fruiting stuff like that. I mean, it's coming to an end. I've already prepped a few beds for the winter, got them ready to go and just getting them covered up with stuff. And I got a few left to go when we pull that, but I'll probably just leave a couple. I'll leave the chard into the winter time. I probably won't do nothing with those beds. I'll just I'll let it go till it actually kills it down. And I've actually had winters that were really mild where it didn't even do that. So,
yeah, same here.
Kale.
Well, and sometimes those beets and carrots are better after a little bit of a frost and a freeze.
Yeah. So I got some of that going on, but I've been trying to I did replace a few boards on the fence just yesterday. Some of those were starting to rot and stuff. So I went out there and put up some new boards on the fence, and I've been taking some fig cuttings and putting those in pots because I want to try to spread. I want more figs. Figs have turned into to be one of my favorite little treats on the property, and I have one fig tree. And I'd like to have several because I love those. Those are delicious.
I'm still so jealous that you can grow them. I've tried.
I'm so sure you can't up there, but somehow. Because they die clear back. I mean, they grow from the ground every year. So I think you just put enough mulch and stuff over they cut them to the ground and mulch them up. I don't know if they would come back up for you or not. I don't know. The Chicago.
I had 3 Chicago figs. One died, or 2 died. Like they never came back up. I have 1 that came back up again this year. So I'm going to try.
Are you piling anything on top of them for the winter? And
I bring them inside.
Oh, so I was wondering if you just left them outside, but then you just piled a bunch of mulch
I'm
and
gonna
stuff
try
on
that
top
this year.
of them and try
I
to
have no
really get them
choice.
to.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
I think they might just grow back every year like that if you did that. I don't know. I mean, you're significantly colder and longer winter, so maybe not. But
Well,
and
I might
I
try.
honestly, I don't even start getting any fruit from them until like late September. Like it's long. It's a long wait for them.
I might try. I think it was, and I don't know if she's still called this, but 10th Acre Farm. She has them up against her house.
Yeah. Oh,
So
using like the solar.
I might try that because
Yeah.
obviously you're going to get a little bit of that radiant heat.
Yeah. Huh? Yeah. Like a
So
little
I
bit
might
of
try
solar
that.
battery there. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
might try
Or
that.
put you up a
Those
little
figs are
greenhouse
yummy.
and grow them in the ground on in a greenhouse.
Oh, I don't have a greenhouse, and I'm not sure that's in the.
The worst thing about greenhouses is remembering to water everything.
Well, yeah.
I mean, and honestly, you don't think about that till you have one, but it's like you get, yeah, oh, I'm protecting it from the weather, but you also got to provide it the weather that it needs because it needs water. So you got to remember to water things. And I'm bad about that. That's why I had a lot of stuff on timers. And when I had the aquaponics system running there, it actually was nice because it's like I didn't have to worry about the watering, it just kind of rotated. But you still have to check on those aquaponic systems because if something fails, you need to know about it. Hence why I'm not doing it right now because of that.
Well, and I struggle like for right now, we struggle for flat area to put something on.
Yeah.
So we put the house is on a hill. The only flat area that we have, we're going to put a pole barn on. So we'd have to find a flat area for.
Yeah, smaller greenhouse. You wouldn't have to do a really big one, but maybe a 10 or 12 foot long one or something.
I literally don't have much flat. I'm not
really not even 10 or 12 feet of flat area. Huh? That's crazy.
I'm going to have to my gardens are going to be on contour.
All the better. You get that tractor out and you dig it into the side of a hill on the sunny side facing into it, and you actually get some insulation out of it too. So.
Yeah, we might do something more like a Wallapini.
Yeah.
Something more like that because that would fit our topography better.
Yeah, and there's a lot of benefits to that as far as temperatures and things. Yeah, for sure.
So that's something I would like to do. But yeah. It's hard to be patient. It's hard because you want to do all the things.
Oh, you do. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, isn't it? Doing all the things.
You want to do all the things and starting over is not fun. I mean, I was just standing in the yard yesterday because I was out there yesterday looking at the soil that's in the front yard is so pathetic.
Really?
It's just white sand.
Oh, and at your new place.
Yes, and I'm just like, and I had the soil that I brought over from my house that came with the strawberries, and it's nice and black and beautiful and full of worms. And I'm like, I am starting over. Why am I doing this?
Yeah, it might be a little hard to sell your old house if you go out there with a backhoe and dig up your entire garden and take it with you.
Take all my soil with me. Boy,
have a big hole out there.
Yeah, man, it's tempting.
Yeah, no, it is amazing. You put so much work, and people just don't think about what a valuable resource that is. Sometimes it takes so long to get that soil the way you want it, and when you get it, it just takes a long time. Especially if you're starting out with something really bad, it takes a while to get there. And it's just you hate to leave it. It's just like you hate to leave it. You're taking all these.
So we're going to be putting a lot of effort and time and money into garden beds again.
I'm sure the soil that's actually in your woods is probably really good. It's just the stuff that's out where you want gardens and things. It's probably not that great on the more open areas.
Well, it's all woods.
So just from the leaf litter and all the years of things just stacking up, it's still pretty bad, huh?
Still pretty sandy.
Yeah. Well,
where
you think with all that biomass.
So we have some old growth forest towards the back, which that's where we're going to be trying to get some of the leaf litter and stuff from. But it's going to be a process. It's going to be a lot of work. And
a lot of fun.
It will be, it sounds like it. Like, I know it sounds crazy. Everyone's like, oh, it's a lot of work, but we love it.
Yeah. I think I would love, I love a little bit of challenges. I like the challenges.
So I think I'll be doing I'm in the front yard area. I think I'm going to try a little bit of the Charles Dowding method where he just kind of like
lasagna garden. Yeah. I think it's probably your best bet. Yeah, I think it would be.
And we can't dig super deep there because we do have some utilities there.
It can be a little more expensive to do those on because if you don't have the compost that you're making yourself, you have to bring in compost. Right.
Yeah, we don't yet this year.
Right, and you don't have it yet.
Yeah, so it will be more expensive, but I think it'll be worth it. So next year, our vegetable garden is going to be in the front yard. It'll be just like here. It'll be right in the yard and it'll be really close as we work on the other gardens. So, yep.
Yeah. Awesome.
And then slowly it will turn into the front yard will turn more into what my dream was, like the old school like kitchen garden with like medicinal flowers and herbs, kind of like the French look, That's what I want the front yard to look like. And then my annual vegetable garden's more at the back, but there's a lot of work to do to get to that point.
Oh yeah. Well, you'll have to take what we're going to talk about today, which is how and when to decide to add something to your homestead, and really just apply that to your life over the next 30 years and go from there.
Patience. So hard. Patience are very hard when it comes to deciding what to add and how quickly to add it and when to add it. It's so hard to be patient because you just want to do it all. Yeah.
Well, let's just jump right into it then. I mean, let's talk about making those decisions, like how and when to decide to add something to your homestead. When does it? You've done some notes here. I haven't, honestly. This was your idea of a podcast. I think it's a great idea for this podcast, and I will also just go ahead and get it out of the way now. Everything I'm going to say about this is because I'm bad at it and I know the wrong way to do it, and it's not because I have the best. I have advice based on me as a failure, not as me as a successful person in this, because
I have failed at this too.
I am really bad at adding way more than I should at the wrong times. And I have even cut back more than I should have when I got overwhelmed.
Yes. Yeah.
I've done that as well. I've taken things away when I shouldn't have took so much away, just because I felt like I'm overwhelmed completely. And then I just went too far the other way. I did that one year.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I pulled half my garden out and put it back to grass.
Me too. Yeah. Or I turned it into a play area for the kids, and I just had done with all this, and I went from one extreme to the other, back to the other extreme, and then I get overwhelmed again.
From experience here.
Kind of, but I mean, our advice is, we know it's like, I know what you should do, but I'm very bad about following that advice for myself even. And that is, I mean, I'm trying to do better with that, because I have experienced some pretty serious overwhelm over the years when I've done too much. Well, honestly, and we can get into this later, but honestly, even not just overwhelm, I've also experienced a lot of waste.
Yes.
And that is just, I feel it just feels wasteful, because I will grow so much that I don't have time to do all the things with it.
Yeah.
That I could grow a lot less and end up with the same amount. And, as far as eating fresh and preserving, because I end up,
so it's like,
it turns compost, or something.
So it's like the waste, it's the stress level.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the financial burden, kind of a little bit of a Dave Ramsey spiel here, being wise with your money. So for me, it's, the same three things. I've overdone it and then swung way back the other way and ripped half the garden out and put it back to grass. And, one year I didn't even grow anything, and I gave up gardening because I was just too busy. And then I got really depressed. Gardening is just my outlet. Yeah. So, yeah.
I never completely did away with my garden. I have done away with animals like 3 times and then brought them back like in the spring or whatever. And that's good, I think, because definitely animals seem to take up the most. Well, they take up the most routine time. Like you definitely have to do these things every single day with animals, and these things every single week with cleanings. And this, there's just a schedule of things you have to maintain with animals that you don't necessarily have to maintain with gardening.
Right.
So definitely when it comes to animals, cutting those back can make a really big difference, or adding those can make a really big difference as well. So, I've definitely done away with animals a few times. But
animals are not the thing where you can say, I don't have time today, I'll do it tomorrow.
Right. You can't put that off. They have to be tended to every day. So I have done, that's been the bigger changes I have made, have definitely been there. But I've never cut back my garden completely. Like I never said, I'm not going to garden this year, but I probably cut it down to about 25% one year, which was a big change, a big change.
I did that the year that I started going back to work. And then I got a membership at the community garden, which was, I talk about that from experience. I was at the community garden for 2 years. But but I missed having my garden at home. So yeah.
Yeah, I didn't feel good when I cut it way back. I did away with the animals. I cut back to about 25% of my garden. I had a really laid back year. I felt like I wasn't doing anything. I mean, we ate a few things fresh. We didn't even can anything out of what we had because it was just not even enough. We just ate fresh. And I thought, this is not this is not where I want to go. This isn't even working towards the goals that I ultimately have. So that's a factor for me. It's like when I determine one of the things I determine of how to add something or when to add something is, okay, what long-term goals do I have? Yeah, and I'm always thinking, where do I want to end up? And if it's not at least taking baby steps towards that, I don't want to do it. Or if it's going to hinder me getting to those goals, because it's real easy to be emotional at a time for a season and make your decisions based on that. So you pretty much want to always keep your long-term goals in your vision. That way you don't make these changes that can really hinder that goal. And I've done that before, like I said, when cutting back a garden or doing away with animals, that definitely takes away from my long-term goals of self-sufficiency, preparedness, healthy living. I mean, all these things that definitely it takes away from that if you're removing that. But also adding things too quickly can do the same thing. Because if I can't care for them properly, it's actually a burden and it doesn't help me reach those goals either.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that's what I talked about was goals, because I do think it's important for like, what's your goal for next year? What's your goal for 3 years from now, for 5 years from now? And obviously that can change.
Yes.
But you kind of have an idea. Like for me, mine are similar to yours. I want to close my loops more and more and more. I want to actually bring animals because we haven't had animals here in a while. We had chickens for a while, but we haven't had them. So I think everybody needs to evaluate what their goals are. And then even if you have to write them down, obviously this should be a family decision if you're doing this with family or your spouse, or if you're doing it together with friends. But having that goal is definitely really, really helpful. Because once you have that goal, you can kind of base everything else that we're going to talk about off that goal. So, because some people, if you're a vegetarian, or you're never going to want, well, maybe you will want animals as pets, but you're probably not going to want a milk cow or, meat animals. So that can help you evaluate when and what to add to your homestead is these goals. So,
yeah. There's several things I think about. You put down, the first thing you put down was like need versus a want. And I think that's really good too. Is it something you just like? I can think of a lot of like novelty type animals that you might want, but are they really helping you reach your goals? Is it really something you need to reach your goal?
Exactly. And like one of the things I put in there was bees. Now, do I want bees? I do want bees. But do I need them right now?
Yeah.
No. And if I got them right now, I would be overwhelmed. So even though some wonderful person gifted us a hive, a brand new hive, and books and everything to go with it. Somebody gifted us that. But right now I have a really good raw honey source. So it would not make any sense for me. Oh, I have this hive. So part of that financial situation's been figured out. It wouldn't be good for me to just go and get the bees because I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah, there's a learning process. But again, the evaluation doesn't just come down to, well, I've already got a source. I mean, there's a lot of things that can really weigh into a return on investment, not just money, not just the product, also the benefits to your garden and your orchards. I mean, there's other returns of investment with bees, but you do have to weigh that out and bring it in at the right time because there's also time commitments. There's times to learn how to do it, actually doing it. So I feel like the time commitment evaluation is a huge thing to consider when you're considering adding something to your property.
Yeah, and that's part of that next thing with research and planning.
So,
because have you done your homework? Have you read books, watched videos? Ideally, you find somebody locally and you can go visit.
Especially with bees. Bees and mentors.
Yeah, we have we have a local bee, for lack of a better word, group. There's a club. We have like a club where people go and there's a couple of people that are experts and then people can go take classes. that's what I want to do before I go and get bees, because, bees have their issues with colony collapse, and there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot to deal with bees. They're literally are a livestock. They're definitely not.
And getting set up with them, I mean, you were fortunate, you got some stuff gave to you, but if you're buying all this stuff and
Yeah.
it can be really expensive. Even just the bees themselves getting started can be really expensive.
Yeah. And then, there's evaluating the cost, the true cost, not the ideal cost. I always have these, and this is talking to me, not everybody else, but this is talking to me. I always have these ideal, but I can close the loop. I can grow this for it, and I
Right.
can grow this for it. But maybe I won't have time and maybe it won't work out. So I need to look at things realistically, and what would it cost me to buy
Mm-hmm.
feed? For example, rabbits. I mean, unless I have the trees already growing and the ability to grow all of their fodder, I need to include that I'm going to have to probably buy some pellets then.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of what I was thinking about. If I
Yeah, you
want a
always have.
bigger barn, maybe not animals, but a bigger barn, have you considered the fact that getting a barn is going to need upkeep, and you're going to have power to it, and you're going to pay more for taxes?
Mm-hmm.
There's just all that money stuff.
Right. Yeah, you have to weigh everything. I mean, you have to think about the upfront costs. You have to think about the benefits. You got to think about alternatives. Like if there's something I could do cheaper that would do the same thing. You even if you really need it, again, a want versus a need. Does it help you reach your long-term goals? All these things you have to take all those things in consideration. And again, if something can save you time by adding it, I mean,
Right.
should you add? Maybe. I mean, if something's going to save you a lot of time by adding this thing, it's going to cost you some upfront money, but it's going to return. You're going to have a return on investment plus the time saving, plus just all the other benefits of it. Yeah, maybe that's the thing when you go, okay, this makes sense to do, and a barn could do that. A barn could absolutely do that. Bees could
Well, and
absolutely
a
do that
green,
for some
I mean,
people.
if you're already selling produce at market and your whole basement is full of grow lights and it's taking over your basement, maybe it is time to do that greenhouse and do the investment in the greenhouse, because you've already established that that's a need, and you can use it, and it will probably end up saving you money because you're not running those grow lights all the time. You can actually use the sun.
Mhm. Yeah,
Sometimes it is a good thing to
I,
spend that money and that time.
I think there's an aspect of function stacking too that comes into this because so many things you can evaluate can it serve multiple functions.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these things can, serve multiple functions for you. So you're not really just thinking about the cost and return on investment on the one thing that it's basically primary purposes. You think, okay, if I'm thinking about this from a permaculture perspective, and I'm really applying the function stacking to it, what all can it do for me? Because that can really change the decision on it being worth it or not, too.
Yeah,
Because
I think about that like
yeah,
our podcast that we did with chickens.
mm-hmm.
Like, yes, you have to buy feed for them, but no, they don't just give you eggs.
Yeah, I think about it with even something as simple as kitchen appliances.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, that's an expensive thing. Return on investment. Can I do it without it? Yeah. Can this thing serve multiple functions though? Can it do other stuff for me? Well, now it just increased its value for me and made it okay.
Right.
This is worth the $200 or $300 I'm gonna spend on this because it just increased itself in valuable by being able to provide for me 3 or 4 different things in a function stacking
Yeah.
process.
And sometimes something buys you time, which is
Yes,
invaluable sometimes.
absolutely. And one thing I have definitely come to respect is how much time something can save me because
Yeah, I
it's
can
all
tell you
about time for me.
so we bought our tractor. Oh man, I cringed when we bought that thing because
I cringe when I
they're
ever up my wall
expensive.
for anything.
Yeah, and it wasn't new. We bought a used one. We paid cash, but it was not cheap. We paid more for that tractor than we have paid for, let me see, all but one of our cars over 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we paid a lot for it, but that thing is a force multiplier.
Oh yeah.
It has multiplied our time. We would not be anywhere close to where we are right now without it.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, it was worth it. So there's things like that. There's kitchen tools that are like that. There's garden tools that are like that.
Absolutely.
That can just multiply your time, that are totally worth the investment because it gives you time to do other things.
Mm-hmm.
Or for you to work on your blog, which then brings in money, or It might buy somebody time to go to the farmer's market and sell some things. So yeah, there's that.
I even think about just expanding a garden. I mean, I think about like it's an expense in that. I mean, you're having to bring in some more amendments. If you don't already have your own stuff sitting there, like another big compost pile, and you think I'm going to expand this garden because I expanded quite a bit this year, and I'll say it was a little bit overwhelming because I didn't just expand; I doubled, the size of my garden, and and added a few trees too, and guilds and things. So I mean, I really kind of blew it up, and doing that, it was a lot of work, and it didn't feel worth it. I mean, at the time, I was really starting to debate about halfway through the season, was it really worth it? But then as I started preserving food, I was like, okay, we put a lot of food on the shelves. I mean, over here, all these shelves are just completely full of jars, and I've got baskets of stuff with onions and potatoes, and and squash and all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, I look at that and I go, okay, it was worth it. I put up way more food than I normally put up. But then I'm also like, it was the actual preserving part was really time consuming this year. Like I was starting to get that actually became the part where I was getting almost burned out because I was doing way more preserving than normal. And I thought any more than this, there'd have been stuff definitely getting wasted, a lot more getting wasted because I just wouldn't have had any more time to do it. I was about my limit. So I definitely would not want to expand any more annual gardens than what I have. As a matter of fact, I almost ain't so sure it wouldn't make more sense to eliminate just a little bit of it and put it more into perennial and trees and things like that and guilds. Because I think I actually have maybe a little bit more in annual garden than what I probably need.
Yeah. And so that's something good that and this is also something that we can evaluate every year and adjust.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Because, just because now isn't the time, it doesn't mean in the future it won't be for something. Like just because now isn't the time for me to get bees doesn't mean I'm never getting them. We will probably get them. I'm just not getting them now. And, same with the greenhouse. And, I mean, that's huge. And the other thing too is adding something, you slowly learn it and then you get faster at it. Like when you first got rabbits, it probably took you a while to get in the groove of things, and now you just do it. And
you have to develop a system every day. Yeah,
it's like me when I'm in the kitchen. There half the time I don't even use recipes. I just cook, and with preserving, that just becomes part of my day. With sprouting grains and making bread, it's just part of my day, and it literally gets to the point where if you were new at doing it, it would take you a couple hours, but it literally just takes me a few minutes. And that's how all this becomes. And that's why as you add things, you can then add more, but you just kind of have to do it slowly.
Or even just adjust and do things differently too. Like for example, I was the first probably 3-4 years I raised rabbits, and quail. I kept a huge number year round, and I'm processing. I just didn't slow down. And then what it started noticing is that wintertime took 3 times longer because I'm changing out water bottles that are frozen a couple times a day, water dishes, and I'm having just tend to things constantly. And I thought it just makes more sense to maybe even up my game a little bit through the summertime, produce a lot of it, go ahead and process and do away with, and just bring it down to a breeding flock, or breed flock or breeding, pairs only for the wintertime, keep them going. It's, close to spring, fire things back up and get them breeding again, keep things going again. And it made a lot more sense because it saved me a lot of time. I ended up with really probably pretty much the same amount of product for the year because I upped it a little bit in the summertime, reduced it in the wintertime, and cut myself back on the amount of labor I had to do.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
You just have to evaluate things every single year, every single season, really. And you learn as you go how to do it more efficiently.
Yeah, you learn how to organize it and what works for you and what works for your climate and all that kind of stuff. So that's a really good point. So one of the other points that I wanted to make was, the financial investment. Do you have the funds now? And what are the ongoing financial needs and money inputs for it? Because, we get excited about, things, and sometimes we neglect to think ahead that this is going to need continual maintenance and money inputs, and we just have to think about that. That's one of the things we have to consider. Do we have the finances to continue to fund this? will it eventually be able to fund itself? All of those things we need to just kind of.
And things cost more. A lot of things cost more starting, and then they don't cost really hardly anything later. And it's like, do you do away with that money? Or I'm pretty much against going in debt for most anything. It can make sense if you know that the return's near, like next year. We were talking about this before you started podcasting. Like if you were in the farmers markets and you knew that next year you're going to be able to take twice as much to the farmers markets, but you might have to make an initial investment here, and you may have to even take on a little bit of debt. I mean, hopefully you don't have to do that, but if you did, it could make financial sense to do something like that if you know that you're going to get that money back relatively quickly and make more in the future. It could make sense. So yeah, I mean, you have to evaluate that if it's the right move or not based on that.
But just be honest about it. I mean, don't say, well, I'm going to get this thing and it's going to cost me $200 a month, but I have no idea where that $200 a month is going to come from. That's just,
well, and a lot, and you and I have talked about this a few times before too. A lot of those kind of decisions, a lot of time, especially in this space, are fear-based decisions.
Yeah.
People will go into debt for something because they feel like it's usually based around prepping or preparedness. And they're thinking, I'm going to do this, even though I don't have the money, I'm going to put it on a credit card because I just feel like 6 months from now, the world's going to fall apart and I'm going to need this. Well, what usually happens is the world didn't fall apart. And now you're paying a lot of interest on something that you maybe didn't need. I mean, that happens every day with people, it just happens a lot. People do make fear-based decisions that put them in debt. And then, and that can even happen with large livestock. Somebody can say, okay, I say they have 10 acres. Well, I'm going to go out and I'm going to invest in 5 beef cows and a couple milk cows and do all this thing. And they don't know anything about cows.
Yeah. And they've never milked a cow.
Never milked a cow in their life. They make these investments and now they are just like, they don't know what the heck they're doing. They may end up with sick cows or dead cows or, losing money, or they don't even know how to do, really proper land management, because managing cows ain't just managing the cows. It's managing the land those cows are on to keep them eating. And they don't know how to do that. And they just make all these mistakes. And yeah, I mean, sometimes you can learn pretty fast doing that, but if you can't keep up with the learning pace with what you've invested in and what you could actually lose pretty hard on that. I mean, you have a cow die, that's a huge investment.
That is a huge investment. You're talking thousands of dollars that you're losing in product and also the purchase of the animal.
Primary investment.
Obviously, it just, nobody wants, that's not good animal husbandry.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's easy to get overwhelmed and sucked into that. I mean, I want an emu really bad. They're really cute and they're really fun. And I see the videos of them on, there's a couple of YouTubers that have emus. But when I evaluate whether or not I need an emu,
probably
it's not on the list, and I would have to consider it as a pet.
That one big egg every once in a while wouldn't be worth it.
I mean, you'd have to consider it. You would really just have to consider it as a pet, which is fine. If I have the money to provide for it and the ability to provide for it, and I have the fencing for it. And that's one of the things too, like, I mean, that we've talked about. For me, one of the things I want to get is goats, because we have a lot of brush to be used, but apparently fencing a goat is kind of like fencing a cat. So we probably need to put a little investment into some fencing before we decide to go with some goats.
I want to kind of go back to time for a second. You mentioned earlier about like just how much time it costs you and the people helping you do it. And I was thinking about, like, families change. Like, you may have your kids living at home and they're helping garden and tend to animals and doing things. And at some point they move out. And now 2 things happen. One, you may not need as much, but also you don't have as much help to do these things either. And that can change things drastically, as far as adding and taking away on your homestead.
Empty nest for a homesteader is a wide awakening, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to be honest, as a parent, you always feel like your kids could just help a little bit more, right? You always think they could. And I can tell you, once my kids grew up and moved away and moved out, I did not realize just how much they helped. And
Yeah.
it was a heavy, my kids moved out my kids were pretty close together. So once they were gone, it was within a quick period of time that
Yeah,
we
mine too. Yeah.
big
They were a year
adjustment.
apart, 3 of them year
Yeah.
apart.
Yeah, we had to make this big adjustment. And it was like, yes, we didn't need as much, but then suddenly it was like I was doing everything.
Yeah, you still had the same amount initially though, because
Yeah,
they
and
moved out
I
and you
was
didn't
doing
reduce.
everything. And I
Yeah.
was like, wow, I didn't realize, just how much they weeded. I didn't realize just how much they cooked. I didn't realize just
Mhm.
how much they cleaned up inside the house and just how much planting they did. And
I think if you had animals, you'd really notice it too, because they're feeding and
yeah.
caring for the
Well,
animals and things like
when I got
that.
rid of my, when
Yeah.
I got rid of my chickens, when my chicken keeper moved out.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it makes a big difference. I've kind of just built everything around me doing it, but I know a lot of families with a lot, and it's like their kids are out there doing stuff every day. I grew up doing that. I'm sure my dad felt it when I moved out, I'm with the stuff I was doing around there. I mean, it makes a huge difference. And again, you won't need as much either. But you have to evaluate that and think, okay, how much less do I need? How much can we cut back? Because you're going to probably want to make that adjustment because you're going to feel it otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, especially when it gets to animals or larger acreage, I think that you probably struggle with more, but especially the animals. I mean, I know families right now that are going through that. They had large families and now they're down to just a couple of kids home. But they also do have like homesteads where they make money.
Yeah.
So they didn't cut back on the amount they were producing. They're still producing the amount because they have customers, but they don't have nearly the help that they did because the kids have grown up. So
Turned into a lot more work. Yeah.
It is a lot more work. And so what happens when you get overwhelmed is you kind of tend to cut corners and then you start to get frustrated.
Well, you don't enjoy it as much either. It's
you
like,
don't
okay,
enjoy it as much, which is how you and I both have ended up putting our gardens back to grass.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. So I just felt like this was a good topic because there's still the homestead community is continuing to grow. And there's a lot of people coming into the space and wanting to have it all at once. And I think a lot of people don't realize that it's taken people a long time to either get where they're at or they grew up in it. So they just had that knowledge. And I'm just encouraging people to just slow and steady wins the race. Isn't that how Aesop's fable goes? Slow and steady wins the race. And just take your time. There's going to be lots of homesteaders out there that'll be willing to sell you some baby chicks next year or the year after when you're ready, or bees, or
for me, it's just
emu.
I think the thing that's always made me not follow the best advice on this sometimes is I just get so anxious to see that final goal reached.
Yeah.
And I spend more money on trees than I should each year. I spend more money on seeds each year than what I need to. I've spent more money on animals than I need to, and cages and fencing and just all the things instead of doing things in sections because I get in a hurry. It's like, the older you get, the less time you feel like you got, and it's like, I want to get this to the point where I want it quick as I can. Well, that's fine, but I know the mistakes that you make when you do that, because it's like if you can't gradually adjust that labor and that expense and gradually adjust anything right with it as you're expanding, things are going to suffer. You're not going to see things do what they should do best. Like just pruning trees around here is a huge process. And what I find is pruning isn't the big job. It's they end up all these limbs and stuff end up sitting in big piles around my yard until I get time to run them through a chipper, to make mulch or whatever. And it's like right now I think I have 3 piles of tree limbs that I haven't even pruned for the winter yet. So it's like I think about those things. It's like those are time commitments that maybe it doesn't register with some people how much time that actually is, but that can be really time consuming to sit out there for a couple days grinding up tree limbs, and then spreading that stuff and, and cleaning out all the garden beds, even in the fall, to get them in the compost and then get them all the stuff put down, the new compost put on them.
Oh yeah.
Get them covered with leaf litter or biomass or whatever. And it's just amazing how much work that takes. It's a lot more than what you think, what some people think. Even I'm so big on permaculture, and it does save you a lot of time. But even in my guilds, I got to go through and prune those trees and make sure I've got plenty of mulch down, and and you're just doing things. Even in those guilds, you're doing things, especially when they're young guilds, not when they're fully mature. So there's still a lot of work there. And so you definitely, it's like me, I'll add a guild at a time with a couple trees in it and add a garden bed or two at a time. It's the right thing to do instead of adding 12 or 16 like I did this last year. That was way too much.
And everything takes longer than you think it will.
Yeah.
It just really does. So yesterday, me planting those asparagus and strawberries, this is me replanting them, not me digging them up. So it was a 300 square foot bed that we have next. We're making this in the permaculture orchard / guild that we're making, where I put these. And we had already put a ton of time into it by digging it up, and we had double dug it and broad forked it, which if you don't know what double digging is, you basically just you dig it really deep. It's a lot of work. You dig it twice. Yeah. And we had amended it with organic amendments and all this kind. We've spent a lot of time on this bed. So this isn't even including that. But yesterday I went out there and it took me 6 hours to plant all that and then water it because I had to hand water it. And in my mind, I thought I'd be done by noon. And I wasn't home till 4 o'clock.
I do that all the time.
Yeah. It's like, but it's that I was like, man, that took me forever.
I went out yesterday, like I was telling you about fixing fence earlier, and I thought, well, I got to replace a few boards. And I thought, well, this probably shouldn't take a half hour, 45 minutes. I think I was at about 3 or 4 hours fixing boards.
Everything takes way longer.
Well, I'm thinking, I have everything is screwed together. So I'm trying to take the screws out. Of course, the screws are stripped and rusty and breaking. And I'm having to pry things out with crowbars. And I'm like, of course, everything always goes haywire when you're trying to do stuff, right? So, it's exactly, everything takes longer, generally. Everything.
Yeah. It's happened to all of us. You go out I had chickens. It's all I've ever had. So that's all I can speak to. But you go out to check on the chickens and you let them out and you're like, 5 minutes, you go out, give them their water, give them their food. And then, wait, is that one walking funny? Wait, I think that one's walking funny. Okay, I'm going to go back in. I'm going to eat breakfast. Then I'm going to come back out and check on that again. So your 5 minutes turns into, this whole day of evaluating this chicken, and then you got to separate the chicken because you think something might be. So it's a time commitment, and you just kind of have to think about those things. I mean, for us I probably jumped the gun putting our orchard in. We have 14 trees out there. If I had to do it again, I would have waited till we moved, but we didn't know when we would be moving. We had no idea. It was one of the very few times that we jumped on something very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But the amount of time that I have put into that orchard, hand watering it and babying it because we don't have anything out there, I could have spent on buying bigger trees and probably still would have saved time on the amount of money, if you consider my time as money, that I put into it. Because I bought these baby trees and I was like, well, it takes them 5 years before they produce. So I got to do it now because now is the time. It's always, with permaculture, trees, are the first thing you do. And
20 years ago.
Yeah. And it's like, I could have just bought 5 foot, 6 foot trees instead of whips, which is what I bought. And,
which have a way higher failure rate. I
could have just bought 5 foot trees and 5 or 6 foot trees and spent way more money, but the amount of time that I put into it, I could have just worked and paid for them 10 times over.
Right.
So I probably pushed the issue there too much.
There is so much to consider about this. And I almost feel like we're encouraging people to not add things, but I'm not. I'm
not either. No,
you have a long-term goal, and I think you do as much as you can that fits your schedule, your time, your financial commitments. You do as much as you can. I mean, I'm all for being as self-sufficient as possible, to be, to move closer to preparedness as possible at all times, to eat the healthiest you can, and that means having healthy food growing on your property, animals or plants. I mean, I'm all for having as much of this as you can do. but you do have to make sure it fits your financial goals and your financial budget and your time budget, because to me, those two things are dead on. I mean,
They're huge.
even if I can afford it, if my time is just as valuable, if not more, because, it's just like you just don't have a lot of time. You have to really think about how much time these things take. And that's the thing. Nobody has a monopoly on time. We all have exactly the same amount every week. And it's about commitments and it's about what's most important to you, and your priorities. And so we all start out with the exact same amount of time, but what you're going to do at that time and how much time of it you have left after you've made all your other priorities, that's what you have, and you're not going to get any more. And
Yeah,
the only
I
way to
am not
multiply that is with more people doing the same job on the same place.
Yeah, I want more homesteaders, but I don't want more starter homesteaders. I guess my fear is because I've already seen, since I've been on the podcast with you, I've seen this big movement toward homesteading, but I've also seen a lot of people quit it.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want to see is this slow, steady. I want to see the same people that start this year because they're excited about it be here in 10 years and not give up. And I think a good way to do that is, and maybe you can move fast because maybe that's your personality and it works well for you. But it's just evaluate it. Know your goals. Take the time to think about it. Do I have the time? Do I have the money? Is my family willing to help, or the people that are here willing to help?
And where can you find more time?
Time.
Sometimes I don't want folks to take this the wrong way, but sometimes I spend so much time writing and talking about homesteading that it'd be way better if I could actually be out there doing the homesteading. I could do a lot more with my homestead instead of talking about it and writing about it. But I enjoy doing that, and it's a big part of it. But I'm just saying every little thing takes away from the time that you're doing out there actually doing things. And so I have to evaluate that into my time as well. I do spend a lot of time just talking.
Yeah. And like I said, I mean, we spent this big, huge financial investment on the tractor, which for us ended up being a force multiplier. And it was worth the investment because it bought us time, because it's fast. And for you, you have your greenhouse, which buys you energy. You were able to automate things inside there, and you can grow your fish. So that was worth your investment.
Yeah, it saved me money on buying starter plants because I was starting seeds out there. It actually increased my yield because I was growing things in there through the winter, especially I won't even say winter. I'll say late fall, early winter, and then early spring. I started things, and right in the heart of winter, I maybe didn't grow much in there, but it definitely extended my seasons both ways. Yeah, it did a lot of things that actually the return on the investment made it worth it.
Yeah, and you were growing fish in there too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
plus I just got to sit in a warm greenhouse when there was snow on the ground and pick cherry tomatoes off of a plant when there was snow on the ground. That felt good.
Yeah, and in case people, I mean, one of my biggest concerns is getting out of touch because now we're moving into bigger property. But when we're talking about a greenhouse, we're talking your greenhouse on your 10th of an acre. So this is not some monstrous greenhouse. This is just your little
hobby greenhouse,
backyard hobby greenhouse that you invested in, and it's given back to you. So
yes. Yeah. And again, we bought that property next door. We spent money on that, bought that property next door to us. It was an investment we made. We was like, okay, we got a really good deal on it. So I mean, it really didn't feel like much of a risk at all. But again, I had to value, okay, I'm getting a barn out of this, a pole barn out of this. We're getting, another, a double size of our property, a place where I can plant more trees, put in more garden. So it was an easy decision to make on that one. It was an obvious with the price we got it for. I mean, it was an easy decision. But if it wouldn't have been that price, if it had been more, actually they were asking a lot more for it at first. And we just kind of waited and nobody was buying it. And finally we ended up jumping on it when it got low enough. But I kept evaluating that higher price. I was like, I don't think it'd be worth it at that price. I mean, as much as I would love to have it. So you just make those decisions based on, again, what's your goal and all the stuff in between there, and
nobody can name your goal but you. I think every homestead is different. Every homestead has its own thing going on.
And here's the thing too. Some things you'll just take a chance on. Some things you'll think, okay, this is right. And then you may find out that it may not have been the best idea. And it's not impossible to go backwards a little bit. I've done it a few times.
It's not.
You can always back up. You can always remove some of those things and take some of that out of your life if you have to.
Or just back off. Like I think people ask me a lot about my like what I do in the kitchen and how I spend so much time in it. And I actually
Mm-hmm.
don't spend a lot of time in it, but it sounds like I do when you hear, my fat podcast and my grain
It does
podcast.
sound like you spend a lot of time there. Yeah.
It does, but I don't, but I've got a routine.
Yeah.
And so you can always, when I talk about spending money on things to make your time faster, you can buy food dehydrators and all that kind of stuff. And you can have seasons to that too and go, you know what? I'm kind of burned out of it. There are times where I stick my sourdough starter in the back of my fridge and don't touch it for a few
Gonna
weeks.
sit for a
I'm just
while.
kind of frankly sick of looking at it and sick of babying
Yeah.
it. You can, there's seasons for it. I tend to cook a lot more in the winter, and in the summer, we tend to eat just kind of the fresh stuff that comes out of the garden.
Yeah, I'll go through phases where I'm making some
Yeah.
bread, sourdough breads. I go through some phases where I'm making kombucha and things like that, and then I go through phases
Yep.
where I'm like, yeah, I don't want to mess with that for a couple months. Take a break from it. I've done it many times.
Yeah. And you work this routine out that works for you and your family, and it
Definitely things work best on a routine. If you can get us to, for me, I maybe some people aren't like that, but for me, if I can get a routine down doing the same thing some things are daily, some things are weekly, some things are maybe even monthly, cleaning out coops or things like that. If you can get a routine down, say this is the pattern this needs to follow, I do really good with patterns, and it does save me a lot of time. I feel like too, because you get this routine, this pattern of just doing this quick, and right where things are. Like I was talking about earlier with wintertime, changing out like water bottles for the rabbits and stuff. I got to where I just bought extra. It was an investment. I bought extra water bottles because what some people do is try to come in, bring them in, thaw them out. Well, what I did is I just keep buckets, and I have a bucket full of full water bottles, and I take them out and I just swap them out, bring the other ones in. The bucket sits there half the day. They thaw out. I set them right next to a heater duct. They thaw out, and I swap them out again. And I just keep it going like that. It's like, yeah, I'd invest in more stuff to do that, but I don't have to. It takes me way less time than trying to thaw out, run them under hot water or whatever, trying to thaw them out. And
Yeah.
it's a small investment, but it's one of this. It's a small example of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. And and those things you will make decisions based upon time or money or both. And if you've got more money, you might do things to buy yourself time. And if you have more time, you might do things that save you more money.
Right.
It all ends up evening out.
Yeah, it can for sure. So did we actually solve any problems for anybody today about adding things? What did we come up with?
Probably not. Are you going to stop me from turning my garden into grass again?
No, I'm not stopping you from nothing. I guess it's this. I mean, I think if I had to put this in just kind of wrap it up, maybe into a list, definitely the overarching goal,
Yep.
Evaluate your time, evaluate your resources, being money or other things. You can add in here anything you think that I'm missing. Consider the return on investment.
Yes.
And what those will accomplish. And I think also just constantly be reevaluating, I think, where you're at and what your goals are, and what you have available, time.
And if your money and time are tight, you really need to evaluate a need versus a want.
Yes, there you go. So I think that kind of
need versus want is definitely going to become more important if your time and money are short.
And really try to approach things. I understand that things can look dire and a little bit like it's almost like an emergency situation in some cases, but step back and evaluate as best you can and try not to make those fear-based decisions completely. I get it. Trust me. I've done it. I think during like COVID, we use the C word here. Yep. There was a lot of that happening, and it turned out to maybe not be such a bad decision for a lot of people. I
bought my shared toilet paper.
I bought some buckets of freeze-dried foods, because I didn't know where things were going. I mean, I actually made an investment in some of that stuff, in that 30-year food, or whatever. It's going to stay good because, it's like,
I have some long-term grain storage that because I can't just go to the grocery store sometimes for my foods with my food issues.
Exactly. So, I mean, I think that I get it too. But I'm also saying, try to minimize that a little bit and not fear you make all your decisions, because
Yeah.
you balance them with debt and whatnot, because you can, I guess if you know that you're going to make those decisions and it's not going to say those things. I always try to evaluate if it doesn't happen, and I do this and it doesn't happen, this fear doesn't come to pass. The reason for this fear doesn't come to pass. Am I, what's going to be on the other side of that? Okay. Is this a debt that I'm going to have trouble paying back, or is this going to,
Right.
did I clean out my accounts and it could hinder my future in some way? Think about those things as well, because there's always a good chance that we get very emotionally spent, I think, on things. Things get blown out of proportion a lot of times. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're under talked about. I mean, that's happened before too. But I think most of the time things get blown out of proportion.
Yeah. And we're kind of in the middle of big changes, and
Election year's always got people on the edge.
Yeah. And it's hard to keep emotions in check. And to be honest with you, when it comes to evaluating whether or not you should bring something into the homestead or not, to me, that's part of where the prepping comes into play. So I don't have bees right now, but I know beekeepers. So I went and bought my 5 gallons of honey. And I have that stored because I don't have the time, the education to do bees right now. So I think that sometimes that's when you can combine, okay, I can't do this right now. So that's kind of where sometimes the prepping comes in. I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Well, I think one of my goals.
I can't grow corn right now, so I'm gonna store corn, or you're gonna store some wheat berries.
I think I do. I'm going to evaluate. I'm going to throw this in here, kind of last thing that I want to say, and I'll let you say some things if you want. But I also think one of my major goals that I have to consider when I'm considering adding things to the homestead, yes, closed loop systems, yes, self-sufficiency, yes, preparedness, yes, healthy eating, but yes, to slow and relaxed living as well. And it's hard to completely tie up all your time and have that kind of a lifestyle. So that's important to me. That's an important aspect for me.
That to me is so important. I think for me, homesteading, that is what homesteading, at least in my version of homesteading, includes that, the slow living.
Seasons of it. I mean, I know that there's going to be the time to harvest season when you're going to be super busy and
right. Yes.
But I at least need to have seasons of slow living.
Yes, you know what I mean? Slow. And when I mean slow, I mean, and that doesn't always, slow for me doesn't always mean slow pace.
It doesn't mean sitting around doing nothing. Yeah, I get you.
It just means that more relaxed living.
Slow pace.
I'm doing what I want to do. I'm living life on my terms. Right. This is what I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
But if I create a life that is stressful,
that's what I was getting ready to say the same thing. Slow living to me means not stressful. And that doesn't mean that I'm not busy. It just means that I'm not stressed out about it, like keeping up with things constantly, and getting things done. So
yeah, and I think you can easily get swallowed. I mean, if you get yourself, if you get overcommitted either financially or with your time, you kind of eat into that whole slow living, that more, I don't know what it is that just I know that it pulls on people because I see it posted all over Instagram, these little memes about people wanting to be in their garden and have their fresh bread, and just that it just draws us. And I think that God put that in our heart to just be drawn to nature. So.
I know it's in mine, and I want to live like that. And I'll admit I've put myself out of that many times by adding the wrong things at the wrong time.
Yeah, it's just a slow, simple, peaceful life is,
it's a goal.
A goal.
Yeah.
I'm not there yet, that's for sure. But it's a goal.
I need to do better at it. I need to do a lot better at it for sure. I have seasons occasionally of it, but right now is not one of those seasons. I'll tell you that.
That's actually one of the reasons why I appreciate 4 seasons, because winter definitely is a time where
I think I mean, I don't even like winter time per se because of the weather itself, but I do enjoy that it takes some of the things out of the loop that make you busy and stressed out sometimes. you know. But
Anyways,
yeah, anything else you want to throw in there that you think we're missing? We're probably missing lots of stuff.
I think we're good. I think we've said a lot, and I just hope that it encourages people.
Yeah,
we want to see y'all here in 10 years still. We
want you to enjoy homesteading, and we ourselves want to enjoy homesteading. And to enjoy homesteading, you have to bring things in at the right time and expand at the right times, and just slowly get to your goal, but do it the right way. Yeah.
Yeah. The listeners are our community, and I want to make my community happy and healthy.
Yes. And myself. So,
yeah.
Well, I think that's all we have then. Until next week, happy homesteading. God bless.
And grow where you're planted.